Remember 10 years ago when Paul Scholes decided that he was going to come out of retirement and surprise everyone, including his teammates? I think only the manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, actually knew about this. He was going to come out of retirement and appear for Manchester United in a Manchester derby at the Etihad Stadium as a complete shock to the world of football. Andy, in terms of sort of FA Cup third round memories for Manchester United, I know there's sort of shocks and results and things like that, but in terms of stories, this is as good as it gets, isn't it?
Yeah, it was fantastic, partly because of the secrecy of it. So Scholes was in training and he'd retired from playing, and he was doing bits with some of the younger players, and a lot of the United players kept saying to him, you should be playing again, you're brilliant. And he'd just laugh at him and say, I want to spend more time with my family. He just completely killed the conversation. And then the players were on the team bus to that game and saw Paul Scholes on the bus. And even then, they said to him, what are you doing? And he just said, I've just got to watch the match. And they didn't push it. And he was playing. And they only realised when they walked into the dressing room and they saw his shirt hung up there with his name on the back, and they all looked at him, and he sort of went, yeah, I'm playing. And I spoke to a couple of lads who saw that shirt, and they said it gave them such a lift, because going to City and Scholes is back, and they know how good he is because they're still training with him every day, and he's still putting the balls through the legs every day. He's still absolutely killing them in training every single day. And what a brilliant bit of kidology from Ferguson and Scholes, the way he did it. Just keeping that impact for a few minutes before the match started, for the players to realise it gave them a huge lift. And it worked. Look at the result.
Yeah, they were 3-0 up. It probably explains why they were 3-0 up away at Manchester City that day, given the players said they had a lift. It was weird though, wasn't it? 22 on his back. We'd seen 18, obviously, for so many years. And then it almost looked like, I don't know, it just didn't look right, did it, with 22 on his back. But a brilliant story, Laurie, and he came off the bench and nearly had a hand in helping City come back in the game, which might have spoilt it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of think back and think, did that really happen the way you sort of remember it? And Andy's obviously, the oracle here, so he knows exactly what happened. And I remember, I think, just being with mates, don't you? And you kind of like settling down to watch the game. You're like, Scholes, what's he doing there? Absolute madness. And I suppose it kind of crystallised, the Paul Pogba situation where he was on the edges of Manchester United's first team, thinking he should break into it, and you had the result at home to Blackburn, the 3-2, which was quite a killer one for that, and then also a defeat away to Newcastle just after that, and then this is when Scholes comes back. So that's the kind of context for Fergie thinking, actually, perhaps we need a bit of injection here. And obviously they're in the title race, aren't they, with Man City? So there's that element to it as well. It's not just an FA Cup game. It's perhaps a bit of psychology towards the running for that title race. And so, yeah, bring Scholes, break the emergency glass and get the Ginger Maestro back on the pitch. And it certainly gave us a smile on our faces. And obviously then, the next season played a part in another title-winning team. So there was a merit to him actually, returning to action.
Yeah, you were saying before about his level, Andy. So I've gone to the pub to watch the game with my dad because we've not got a ticket for the match with it being away at the Etihad. And our friend Lenny, who at the time was my dad's next door but one neighbour, had managed to coax Scholes out of his retirement at that point to play for his vets team, Chaddy Park.
Brilliant.
And Scholes, the first time he turned up, was something like they won 16-2, Scholes scored 14 and set up the other two, sort of thing. He just absolutely ran the show. He was so much better than everyone else, it was embarrassing. But Lenny had kept managing to get him to come and play week after week. Anyway, before the match, Lenny's telling the story about how good Paul had been and all this sort of stuff. And he said, but it's weird, he didn't reply to my text this week. And Lenny knew him because he taught his kids at school. So he was sort of like, I don't know why he's not replied to my text. It's really unusual that he's not replied to my text. It normally always gets back to me, yes or no. He's one of the first to reply. So anyway, we're sort of like watching the build-up and all that stuff. The team comes up and you just heard Lenny in the corner go, bloody hell, he's playing for United. And so it transpired about 2 or 3 days later, he texted Lenny and said, yeah, I'm sorry, mate, I couldn't reply because I didn't want to lie to you and say anything other than, I could have just said no, I suppose, but I've been ignoring anything around it because I didn't want to give anything away. So yeah,
it's quite a brilliant story.
It's quite a sort of claim, isn't it, that he didn't play for your team because he was playing for Manchester United at the weekend instead.
Is Lenny to thank then for Scholes being in good fitness?
Probably, yeah, kept him sharp, yeah, running rings round vets players in Chadderton.
And Scholes' son Aaron played for Chadderton in the North West Counties League as well.
I like taught him at school, yeah.
I like it that he's involved in the community. I like it that normal people go to the game and mates with him. And I like it that his son goes to matches, he goes to away matches. And there was one player on the bus to the game that day. When Scholes had said he was just watching the game, just went, well, why are you on the team bus and not in the stand? Surely it's much easier for you. This is the worst way for you to go to the game. He just said, Paul just smiled. So that's from his own teammates. Brilliant.
He didn't let Nike know either, did he? Because Danny Welbeck told the story of him having to buy the boots from JJB and Oldham on his way to the game as well. Danny Welbeck called them snide boots, which we were saying before recording the podcast is quite an interesting glimpse into the professional mind, that if you buy the boots, they're snide, but if you get given them, they're all right.
I love as well how after he retired again, I think the second time, you'd see these clips surface on social media where Scholes is playing for some six-a-side team or whatever. He's
Chaddy Park Vets. He went back playing for him afterwards.
Was it always Chaddy Park then? Okay,
as far as I know,
he's like,
yeah.
Well, he scored one from the halfway line where he's lobbed the keeper, and it's six-a-side next. You're like, five-a-side. How's he done that?
It's Paul Scholes playing against some plodders in Chadderton.
Exactly.
The gap between the quality is so big. If you're a decent semi-pro player, you'd stand out a mile at that level. And if you're Paul Scholes, it's just so inconceivable. You could just win the game by yourself.
He did. That's what I mean. I may have exaggerated slightly, but from memory, it was something like 16-2, and he scored 14. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I think the opposition would have just stood with their mouths open that they were playing against Paul Scholes, who literally had retired from Premier League football 2 months before, sort of thing.
You're right about it being nice, though, that he's connected to the community, and he's obviously, Aaron Scholes on Instagram, he said some meaty things about the current Manchester
Paul
United.
has recently, hasn't he?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Paul has come out pretty strongly with, the Insta story last week. I think we didn't need any deciphering, didn't need the Enigma code, did we, to crack what Scholes was trying to get at with his emojis after the Wolves game. And I like that. Obviously, it's a BT pundit, and you can see him. We saw after the Atalanta game, didn't we, where he was just so disdainful, I suppose, of the way that United had played and predicted the way that Liverpool would slice through him at Old Trafford a few days later. And that is the mentality of a guy that is just that good, but also knows the standards that it takes to win a title year after year after year. And that, he was clearly one of the heartbeats of that United team that kept going because he was so, I guess, nonplussed by the situation. I love the story that he's, as you say, Andy, that he's just smiled at the guy, his teammate, who clearly must know him well, and he's not even giving anything away to him. And I suppose that's just the kind of approach that you need. You need people like that in dressing rooms that aren't flustered by certain situations. And, clearly he has very strong opinions on what is going on right now. And it'd be interesting to see him, out on the training pitches maybe and giving these words to the players direct.
He's not flustered by names either. So sometimes Ferguson will go to him about really big name players and say, what do you think of him? And he'd say, he's a tit. Or he's crap. And he'd just cut straight to it. He's really dry. He's really funny. I did a trip with him a couple of years ago and spent a lot of time with him and really enjoyed his company a lot. What was quite interesting was he was asking me loads about fan culture, because when you play all the time, you're not a fan, you don't know what's going on. And he'd say to me things like, is it safe for my lad to be going to Anfield away? I'm like, of course it is. It's not like the 1980s. He just didn't know. He had this massive blank, because he'd been seeing it from a professional perspective where you bust in, you're in the changing rooms, you hear the noise, but your priority is obviously playing brilliantly, scoring goals and winning titles. So I sensed he was really keen to learn about fan culture and where's the most dangerous place to go to. What's that like when you're up in the stands? And he's good, and he goes to games now. I think he's a brilliant pundit. He doesn't mince his words whatsoever. I know at times there's been people at the club who are like, Jesus, he's absolutely hammering us at the moment. But he's only saying a lot of the time what a lot of fans are saying as well. And as you said before the Liverpool game, he was vindicated. I thought he was a bit strong before that, but he was right. He was totally right.
I thought he was strong too, and he turned out he was Nostradamus. It was incredible, that prediction, wasn't it?